Good day, legends. Take a look at this. Sydney, September 2025. Thousands of Aussies on the streets, draped in the national flag, marching through the heart of the city. The air is thick with chants, the sound of a nation's frustration boiling over. The signs and the speeches all point to one culprit for the country's woes: mass migration. Now, if you're like most of us, you were probably taught that Australia is a nation of immigrants. It's a core part of the national story, a place where more than half of the population was either born overseas or has a parent who was. It's the foundation of our modern, multicultural society, a source of dynamism and pride. So, what in the blazes is going on? How did we get to the point where the welcome mat is being ripped up and in some corners set on fire? This isn't just a simple protest, it's a fault line that has opened up in the Australian landscape, exposing deep-seated anxieties about the cost of living, the dream of homeownership, and the very fabric of our communities. The central question is this: is this a fair dinkum cry for help from a country at breaking point, buckling under the pressure of real systemic problems? Or is it something darker, a nation losing its way, succumbing to a dangerous blame game and looking for a convenient scapegoat? To future-proof Australia, to understand where we are heading, we need to figure this out, and fast. This isn't about taking sides, it's about getting to the truth. Today, we're going under the hood of the lucky country to look at the real reasons people are furious, to dissect the dangerous and often misleading narrative being spun, and to explore what this all means for the future of Australia. The answers are complex, uncomfortable, and absolutely critical. Australia 2025, and here's the blunt truth. For millions, making life work is getting bloody hard. Housing has flipped from dream to nightmare, with first home deposits now taking 7.2 years in South Australia and about 5.9 years nationally, rents averaging $650 per week, and 41.8% of low-income renters in stress, while 223,000 households wait for social housing. Even if you've got a place, you're losing time and money to clogged roads. Drivers in Melbourne waste 92 hours per year, Brisbane 84, Sydney 83 stuck in traffic. Because infrastructure hasn't kept pace with population, and while headline inflation cooled, July's CPI still hit 2.8% with essentials such as housing and food rising, squeezing every budget. It's all connected. Unaffordable homes push people to far-flung suburbs, sprawl jams roads, costs keep climbing, safety nets buckle, so if you're angry, you're not imagining it. This is the pressure cooker behind today's protests. Are we diagnosing the problem right? The signs carried through the streets of Sydney and other capitals offer a simple, powerful diagnosis. The cause is mass migration. It's an easy story to tell and an easy one to believe. More people, the logic goes, means more competition for houses, more cars on the road, and more pressure on services. But when we move past the slogans and scrutinize the evidence, this simple narrative begins to fall apart, revealing a more complex and uncomfortable truth about where the real responsibility lies. The very term mass migration is a vague and often weaponized phrase that needs to be deconstructed. The Australian government's planned permanent migration program for the 2025-26 financial year is set at 185,000 places, a number designed to meet specific economic needs. More broadly, net overseas migration, NOM, the measure that captures all arrivals minus all departures for a year or more, is forecast to decrease significantly. After a post-COVID catch-up peak of 528,000 in 2022-23, it has fallen to 260,000 in 2024-25. This data shows that the recent surge was largely a temporary anomaly caused by borders reopening, not a permanent new state of affairs. Furthermore, a critical detail is often lost in the heated debate. A huge proportion of so-called new permanent migrants are not new arrivals at all. In the 2023-24 program year, 61% of permanent skilled visas were granted to people who were already on shore, living and working in Australian communities. These are international students, temporary skilled workers, and others who are transitioning to permanency. They are already part of the economy and are already housed. To frame them as a new wave competing for resources is fundamentally misleading. Here's the truth behind the housing angst. It's not too many people for a fixed number of houses, because the number of homes isn't fixed. Australia just hasn't built enough for decades. The 2025 Housing Supply Council flags a clear shortfall in new builds, choked by soaring construction costs, tight finance, high interest rates and labor shortages, especially at the affordable end. Mission Australia warns we need about 1 million new social and affordable homes over 20 years, or today's shortfall of roughly 640,000 households, could blow out to around 1 million. The recent migration spike didn't cause this crisis, it stress-tested a system already broken. Blaming migrants is a political diversion that lets leaders dodge the real fixes. The solutions are hard but obvious. Modernize planning laws, unlock land, and invest seriously in affordable and social housing. The argument that migration is fueling the cost of living crisis also wilts under scrutiny. The RBA, July 2025, found the rapid return of international students may have nudged prices, but wasn't a major driver of high inflation. Migrants boost demand, yes, but they also expand the labor supply, easing wage pressure and plugging skill gaps. International evidence agrees. US Fed research links post-pandemic immigration to little inflation impact and a solid GDP lift. That's why Australia runs a targeted program. With an aging population and falling participation, the 2025-26 intake is 132,200 to reinforce healthcare, the net zero transition, and the digital economy. If the economic arguments for blaming migrants are so shaky, we must ask what else is driving this movement. This requires moving beyond spreadsheets and statistics and confronting the ugly, uncomfortable social dynamics at play. We need to call a spade a bloody shovel. When you scratch the surface of many of the concerns about migration, you often find old-fashioned racism and prejudice. The Australian government itself has not minced words, denouncing the March for Australia rallies for their clear association with neo-Nazi and far-right extremist groups. A senior government minister stated plainly that these rallies are about spreading hate and dividing our community. This is not merely a grassroots debate about population policy. It is being actively fueled and promoted by an agenda of hate. Evidence of this is seen in the specific and ugly targeting of the Indian-Australian community, which has grown to become one of the country's largest and most significant diaspora groups. This shift from a general anti-immigration sentiment to the targeting of a specific ethnic group is a classic and dangerous escalation of racist rhetoric. This rise in overt prejudice is happening against a backdrop of a broader, measurable decline in national unity. The Scanlon Foundation Research Institute, which has tracked Australian social cohesion for nearly 2 decades, provides the sobering data. The Scanlon Index of Social Cohesion, which started at a baseline of 100 points in 2007, was estimated to have fallen to just 85 points by 2024, remaining weak after the worst results on record in 2023. This index measures factors like trust in others, sense of belonging, and willingness to cooperate. Its decline indicates that the social glue holding our diverse society together is weakening. This is a critical piece of the puzzle. A society with low social cohesion becomes fertile ground for fear, division, and simplistic, blame-oriented narratives. When people feel disconnected from their neighbors and distrustful of institutions, they become more susceptible to the idea that an other, in this case the migrant, is the source of their problems. The economic anxieties detailed earlier create the initial frustration, but it is this fraying social fabric that allows the scapegoat narrative to take root and flourish. The protests are therefore not just a symptom of economic pain, but also a symptom, and a cause, of this deeper social decay. They are locked in a vicious cycle. Declining cohesion makes scapegoating more likely, and the act of scapegoating further erodes cohesion by creating an us versus them mentality, making it even harder to come together to solve the original systemic problems. Here's the cautionary cut. Look abroad, and you see the risks. In Germany's 2015 refugee surge, national attitudes barely shifted, but places that took in many refugees, especially those already hit by unemployment, saw a sustained rise in anti-immigrant violence. The lesson for Australia is blunt. Mix real economic anxiety with rapid, visible demographic change, and you get a volatile brew that can spill into the streets. The UK offers a second warning. Its beloved NHS was built and still runs on migrant labor. From Caribbean nurses in the 1950s to doctors from the Indian subcontinent, and today nearly 27% of nurses are from overseas. Yet anti-immigrant politics thrives. That's hypocrisy and self-harm. If we want stability, channel the anxiety into building capacity, not scapegoats. So, here we are at a critical juncture in the Australian story. The anger erupting on our streets comes from a real place of struggle. The dream of a secure life with a home of one's own and a manageable daily commute feels like it's slipping away for too many. But the evidence overwhelmingly shows that the blame is being pointed in the wrong direction. The target of the anger should not be the new arrival trying to build a life in the next suburb. It should be the decades of policy failure and political short-sightedness that left us with too few houses, roads that are basically car parks, and social services stretched to their limits. The inescapable reality is that migration is not an optional extra for Australia's future, it is a core component. With our aging population, a steady intake of young, skilled people is one of the primary tools we have to keep our economy dynamic, to innovate, and to fund the essential services like healthcare and aged care that we all rely on. It is projected to be a significant contributor to our future GDP. The government's entire migration strategy is built upon this fundamental premise. However, we strongly suggest a reassessment of the current migration policies and the targeted numbers. We need to ensure we are opening the doors to highly skilled people to meet skill gaps that will truly benefit the national interest. Lower the migration target until some of the problems at home are fixed and move towards a more sustainable path. The current path is surely looking unsustainable. The choice facing Australia is not if we have migration. The real choice is whether we are a smart, capable, and forward-thinking country that plans for growth, reshape the policies, or a lazy one that fails to prepare and then just whinges when the consequences of our own poor planning bite us on the backside. The real future-proof path has nothing to do with slamming the door shut. It has everything to do with competent, courageous governance. Blaming migrants is the easy and ultimately incorrect way out. But this channel is about finding real, workable solutions. So here is a question for the comments. Beyond just cutting immigration, what is one specific bold policy you think the government should enact right now to seriously tackle the housing or infrastructure crisis? Let's get a proper conversation going. Be specific, be constructive. The best ideas will be pinned. Cheers.